Hello and welcome to the Player to Coach podcast. This is episode 18. I am your host, Josh Hill, and alongside me, my co-host, former teammate, and good friend, Jordan Alexander. How's stuff been going? I know the season's kind of in the beginning stages and a lot of stuff going on for you and Coach E.
Yeah, things are going really good. We just started our first official practice this last Thursday um, per the NAIA rules. So we were able to start on September 22nd. Um, yeah, we've had a couple practices so far. Things are going really good after preseason workouts. Great group of guys. Really be getting after it in the weight room, after in conditioning, and now on the floor. So, yeah, it's been really good. It's really exciting. A lot of work to do in the next, 5 or 6 weeks before we play. So, yeah, it's exciting times. Exciting time of year for a lot of teams. Most everyone probably. Um, with goals in mind for where you're at the end of the season, and maybe some unknowns about your team, or maybe some things that you're expecting, out of the culture you've built as a program, or the new guys you're bringing in along with your returners. So it's kind of fun to just be able to work really hard and hopefully put it all together and get to a place where we feel like we can be really successful. So yeah, kind of just in like that grind mode right now of you know, getting after it every single day and trying to get better and get ready for the season. So
There you go. What are some things that you guys are doing? Obviously, some that we've kind of hit on earlier in previous episodes, and as just about anybody in team sports knows, team camaraderie and being able to gel is super important, and that's kind of one of those things that will happen naturally over the course of a season. But I know you guys went on your team getaway trip. I know when we were both there, we did lots of non-basketball related things to try to get the team closer together, learn how to work as a unit. I know we had that. I forget exactly how it was structured, but however many people were in the gym at one time, like 16 or 18 people or whatever it was, half of the amount of players that we had in the gym would have like some sort of a ball of some sort, and we had to find a way to get everybody to catch and touch the ball all the way down the court and back without one
mm-hmm.
repeating itself and without dropping one. And that's just one of those things where it's like, this is not basketball related in any way, but it's that like, who's going to step up, be a leader, who's going to like, problem solve. Do you guys have any of those that you guys are going through now to try to boost that? Hey, let's try to gel a little bit quicker than every other team.
Yeah, nothing like that drill that you were just talking about that we did when we were playing. But yeah, we had our team retreat, and we got out of town, rented a couple houses, ate a lot of great food, just kind of bonded. Did basically, took a weekend and did non-basketball related activities. So we had like a couple of conditioning sessions that weekend, but really just like had the chance to kind of dive into conversations with guys. It actually was really good. It turned into a lot of guys kind of opening up about, their past with basketball, or just some personal life stuff that they've gone through, which is really cool because, it's cliche to say it's bigger than basketball, but we take that really serious in our program at Bushnell, and really try to create a family atmosphere. So, yeah, just a lot of deep dives into conversations. Watched a scary movie together, which really can bring you close. You got a bunch of guys in there maybe that aren't into scary movies, and some guys are like, "Oh, this is a breeze." So that's pretty fun. And we had where we were at for our retreat. Several of us went to like a mini golf course that was actually at a golf course, so it was really nice. That was fun. Got super competitive, and away from basketball, which was cool. What else have we done? Oh, we did that weekend. We split up into three groups, coaches included, and did escape rooms. Which that in and of itself is like a challenge, and You got to learn how to communicate. You're kind of learning people's tendencies and how they communicate, um, and see how people think about things. That was really fun. Honestly, like I've done probably like 5 or 6 escape rooms. That was probably the hardest one I've ever been in. We did not escape the room within the hour, um, and yeah, but it's just kind of fun, like team bonding, things like that. So yeah, I don't know. Trying to think if we've done anything else yet. It's basically it. We've eaten a lot of meals together already, which, there's nothing better than breaking bread with someone else and kind of getting to know a person. So, yeah, it's been good. It's been really good.
For sure. Love doing all that stuff. That's yeah, I get to see the other side of people. And then especially once you it's a good thing to hold on to, especially once you start getting into the season. It feels like a grind, feels like Groundhog's Day every day over and over again, especially in this next 5 week stint that you guys have of no games. Of
Yeah.
what are we doing here? Obviously, we're just doing the same thing to kind of prepare for the season, but not having those games or those different things to break it up makes a difference. And so having a fun little retreat like that's always big. Really quick before we get diving into today's discussion, um, I'm going to bring up something I'm curious about your thoughts on it. I, since I was younger, my dad and I would do lots of games of like horse and bump and that types of stuff, like to compete, like when I was a little kid. And his big weapon against me was being able to shoot with his left hand. And so something that I have worked on for a long time is a lot of form shooting, a lot of jump shooting with my left hand. Um, I'm a pretty like I'm a pretty honest person with myself. I really dare to challenge anybody to shoot left-handed against me if they're a righty or vice versa. And this isn't like, you hear those stories of some people where they're naturally right-handed, but they were forced to be left-handed their whole life or whatever, where they can do that. Like I can sit in the corner and shoot right-handed and then left-handed back to back to back. And I honestly dare anybody to try to keep up with me. Put out a video the other day of me doing it, and it's been a lot of fun. And I'm actually going to start working on it more, just because I'm excited to see how good of a 3 point shooter or just a shooter in general I can be with my left hand. So I don't know if you've known anybody who can do that incredibly well, or if you've ever tried shooting with your left hand, or how good you are. But it's been a fun little journey that I've been on.
Uh, I'm okay at it, I guess. I wouldn't know how to compare myself to other people really with it. I haven't really put too much time and effort into that. Shooting with my left hand. Um, I've, yeah, you're probably one of the better ones that I've seen, um, like up close, be able to do that. Trying to think if there's anyone else. I think one of our coaches that I coach with, Coach Alex, he's actually pretty decent at shooting with both hands. He's a righty, so shooting with his left hand. Um, yeah, I don't know too many other people that can do it. So yeah,
It's
you might
it
be in
started off as
99th
a
percentile.
It started off as kind of like a mental challenge of like you have your P's and Q's of your normal form that you try to hit. It's a little bit more than just did the ball go in or not. You have you're trying to get your lift right, trying to fix your elbow, trying to work on your wrist snap and like seeing where your hand is. Like there's all those P's and Q's that you try to hit when you're shooting, you're working on your form. And it was just kind of one of those like, I wonder if I can check off all of those and just do the same thing with my left arm, how good does it go? And obviously there's the complexity of like your coordination and what you've been doing your whole life that obviously plays a part, but for the most part if you just hit your p's and q's in your form, then you can do anything with the other hand. So that was a fun little mental challenge. And I honestly, I really am a very honest person with myself and my abilities. I really do dare anybody to try to shoot with me back to back, right and then left. See how that goes. But anyway, we can move on from that. um we're going to be talking a little bit about NBA. There's been a little bit of news circulating with the NBA just around the corner, which is honestly shocking to me, especially when the NFL season kind of gets started. You kind of like forget about the NBA just for a few weeks, and you're like, oh yeah, it's right around the corner. I'm pretty sure whenever this podcast comes out, which will be Friday, then tonight will be the kickoff of NBA preseason with the Warriors and the Wizards for the Japan games. I'm pretty sure. So NBA preseason will be starting tonight if you're listening on Friday when this releases. And then I believe the first official regular season game is October 18th. So really just a few weeks away, which is awesome. I love the in between time of forgetting about the NBA for a little bit and then being like, oh my gosh, right around the corner, and I'm like super excited for it again. It's always good to get a little bit of a break away from it and then dive all the way back in. So there's a few like little things in the news that I want to get your thoughts on. And then we'll kind of get into the ESPN top 50 list that came out this week with a little bit of our own take on it and a little bit of reaction on it. So first thing, this one's kind of a out of the blue thing that I saw just on an Instagram video. Kawhi Leonard looks massive. I don't know if you've seen any videos of him lately. He looks
Yeah,
huge.
yeah.
I don't that's kind of something that we talked about during our lifting episode of like how big is too big and like how do you train and whatever. Obviously, that's not going to like hinder his game by any means, but I'm very fascinated to see how massive Kawhi is on the court compared to other NBA players who are usually pretty slender. And then just if his game is any different. Obviously, he's been out for a really long time, and that always plays a part. But man, his legs look like he's an NFL running back, he's huge.
Yeah, I think I did see that video. Um, Definitely had a lot of time to spend in the weight room over the last couple of years. So, yeah, and the Clippers are going to be good. Seriously, I think they're a serious contender. So, um, I wonder what we'll, I wonder if we'll see any differences with him. I kind of doubt it just because of what his game is, but um, probably even a better defender now, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I think the Clippers kind of flew under the radar just in terms of them being a threat, just because they've dealt with so many injuries, and you
Yeah.
kind of forget about them, and then you kind of turn around, you're like, wait, they're gonna have a healthy Paul George, Kawhi. They added John Wall, which has been kind of a roller coaster in terms of his health, but he seems to be on the right track again. Um, Clippers are going to be dangerous. I forget
Well,
if
and
they've added anybody else as well.
I feel
Off the
like
top of my head.
Wall's kind of like an unknown. It's like he hasn't played in so long. Like if he's anything remotely close to what he was, yeah, they're probably a serious contender. But I think he's kind of an X factor for them. So yeah.
For sure. One of those vet guys, one of those guys who you're probably going to see. He's going to have a few games this year where he goes for 30 and he takes over, or just has those moments. But is it going to be the balance of he's always in control when he does that, or is he a little bit of a roller coaster of he takes over and looks like vintage John Wall, or does it look like he's pressing too much and you're past your prime, primarily because of injuries. I mean, he tore his Achilles, a bunch of other things to his knee, and so just you're a different athlete after that. So it'll be interesting to see if he's um, good enough to play that safe point guard role and let the other guys around him do his thing, and then whenever it's his night, just let it go. But that's
Hmm.
obviously the challenge for any vet. Um, the other news that came out, pretty big story. Ime Udoka, head coach for the Celtics, and everything that's going on there. Uh, I'm curious if you um, are surprised at all. I don't think there's a completely official decision on this, but what it's looking like now is going to be a year long suspension for having I forget the wording that they use, but it was consensual, improper relations with a Celtic staff member. 1 year suspension coming off of his first year as a head coach. They go to the finals. They're pretty big favorites to win this year, and I don't think there's any reason why not to until this news came up. I'm personally obviously you can't judge it too quickly until all the information comes out, but a 1 year suspension off of your first year with a team with this high of expectations, that's a big deal. Just based off of the position that they're in. Not that this doesn't happen in the world, but not that this doesn't happen in pro sports, but it feels like this is a little bit different. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a huge deal for their organization, um, and had to take some sort of action with it. Sounds like it's been investigated for months. That's what they said. So it wasn't just like it happened the day before it came out. Um, and yeah, I think it is official actually that he's just suspended for a year. So um, yeah, I mean, sounds like he was kind of given three options, to resign, get fired, or take the suspension, and he accepted the suspension. So um, yeah, which is like almost the worst type of punishment because now he has to sit out, and they still could fire him at the end of all of it. So, uh, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a huge deal. See how it hits him. Basically, everyone else on the staff is the same, so it's just an assistant taking over. Um, but yeah, pretty crazy. Breaking news.
Very crazy. And one of those things that, with any championship organization, the less distractions, the better. This is just another distraction they'll have to work through this year. And I'm curious to see if it quiets down at all. Like if they come out and they really struggle, then the questions of, is the situation taking place and affecting the guys on the court? How's the interim coach doing? Like that's just where that'll go. But winning cures all. So if they win, then maybe the only conversation will be, do they need Ime Udoka back? Might as well just move on to, whatever that conversation is. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how long the storyline kind of holds through. And um, we'll kind of move on from there. But anyway, the primary point of this conversation is to kind of talk a little bit about the top 50 list. We're just going to go through the top 15 and some extras, and kind of give our thoughts and our takes on it. I'm sure everybody who pays attention to basketball got to see a little bit of Stephen A on First Take, his show, and kind of his whole like, I was not the person who put this list together, so don't blame me for anything take. So that was kind of funny to watch. But I guess this is about top top quality and quantity of usage guys in the NBA for this upcoming season, and what like 200 different reporters, beat writers, different organizations around the league put this list together. And yeah, I'm curious your thoughts on them. I'm just gonna kind of read through the first five and just kind of here. Let me run through the whole list really quick, and then we'll just kind of go big notes and big takeaways from there. Um,
Okay.
so at one we have Giannis. At two we have Jokic. At three we have Luka. Four Embiid. At five we have Steph. Six LeBron. Seven Tatum. Eight Kevin Durant. Nine Ja. 10 we have Booker. 11 Harden. 12 Kawhi. 13 Karl Anthony Towns. 14 we have Damian Lillard, and at 15 we have Paul George. Any major notable disagreements or arguments with any of those top 15 right off the bat?
Major, not necessarily major. I would probably shift some people around a little bit on my list, but not like too dramatically. Um, I would probably slide Steph up above Embiid, in my opinion. I would probably slide LeBron past Embiid as well. And Embiid could sit right there at the sixth spot. I would switch Tatum and KD. I would still take KD over Tatum. Um, I honestly feel like a lot of that though, like he's probably the one, and I know like, you probably have an opinion on this too, but I feel like he kind of does it to himself in a sense, or at least has done it to himself, to maybe not get like the respect that maybe he should be getting as far as player ranking. Um, and also, like, I'm pretty high on Damian Lillard, and I know that he's been out, but I would probably take him over a few of the guys that are over him. Um, so yeah, that's just kind of me. I really do think John Morant is really good, but like he's really, really good. Don't get me wrong. But if I was to pick my point guard for my team, I think I would pick Dame. That's who I'd pick. So I don't know. I'm not saying Dame should jump 5 spots up into the top 10, but I would pick him over John Morant.
Okay. I have some problems with this list.
Okay.
And obviously when we're talking about the top 15 players in the NBA, at no like all of these guys are like almost 10 times better than anybody else in the league and that whole thing. So like if you put someone above someone else, oh, that guy doesn't suck. Like that whole conversation, we could just get past that. Um, I think Luca at 3 is a stretch. I think Luke is very good. I don't think he's at 3. Um, I have a similar take to what Stephen A said this week, where I don't see a world where you could put LeBron or Kevin Durant outside of your top 5. I think that's crazy to me. And that, I guess that could have something to do with how they judged and qualified this one, as far as the quality and the quantity of the usage of the player. Maybe like dial back usage for LeBron or whatever. I still think it's. I mean, LeBron averaged 30 last year, and at how this is year 20 for him, and then Kevin Durant with all of the different um dealing with Harden, Simmons, with Kyrie, vaccine, like all that stuff, still averaged 29 in his sleep. Like, what are we even talking about? I think, and I'm a big podcast listener as well. Like, obviously, we have this massive platform with our own podcast, but um, and just about any other NBA player, when they get asked who's the best or who's the most impossible to guard, Kevin Durant. It's across the board. Like it's almost indisputable. So that's not even just my opinion; it's the opinion of other professional NBA players. So if you disagree, then uh, I don't really want to listen to you anymore. I'm
I'm
kidding.
not. I will say I'm not here for the Luca disrespect. That guy's way better than everyone gives him credit for. Like, and just because he's slow and unathletic, like that guy can get any shot he wants. Um, Probably, second to KD, but Luca can score from anywhere. Um, yeah, and draw so much attention, and all you have to do is just put shooters around him. Um, it's embarrassing what he did to the Phoenix Suns in the playoffs. So I'm not here for the Lucas slander. I've been a believer in him from day one. Um, yeah, that guy is a pro's pro. He's amazing. Um, yeah, and he's great. So I'm not. I don't think that he should be sliding out of any like top three. I don't know how you can like think of um, basketball right now and not think Luka's one of the better players. That's just my opinion. If we're
Mhm.
talking about usage with quality and quantity, he has one of the highest usage rates and can carry them. So um, it's kind of like how James Harden used to be in Houston.
Mhm.
Like he's getting used so much and he still looks great. Um, so it's kind of funny. Like LeBron is arguably the best player of all time. We don't even have to get into that argument or anything. But depending on what they mean by the usage and quantity and quality, the Lakers sucked last year. So yeah, he averaged 30, but they sucked. So in Luca, took the Mavs to the conference finals. So if we're talking about like the quality um, of like I guess the team maybe. The Mavericks were way better than the Lakers last season. Um, that's kind of part of the reason I would slide Embiid out of where he's at too. Like the Sixers haven't done anything. Like how long are we going to trust the process? You know what I mean? Like I don't know if there's any more trust in that process. So that's kind of my take. I think Luka's like the premier guard in the NBA right now. Um, and so like if you're thinking about the best guards in the league, it's Luka and Steph, and it's a guard league. So, um, yeah, that's my take. That's my hot take, I guess you could say.
I don't think it's necessarily a hot take. I we're I don't think we're as far off from our opinions on this than it might be coming across, but I I values to sustain success. Jeez, tripping over my words. Sustained success. There it is. And not that he hasn't done that, but I just think like we could look down this list and point at anybody and be like, "Oh wow, you think, Harden's better than whatever," and do that whole thing. And like I don't and I'm not sure if you were taking it as me disrespecting Luca to pull him out of the top 3. I just don't see it at top 3 level because you're talking top 3 of the best NBA players, and NBA is the best players on the planet. So while Luca probably is like I wouldn't put Luca above Steph, and it is a perimeter or a guard driven league. And there's players that I wouldn't put Steph over, and I put KD, Giannis, LeBron, those guys in that area. So in my natural selection, he's probably in the 5 to 7 range. I would put Luca in there, which some could say is disrespectful. He's not there yet for me. Um, and that's not and he could do everything the exact same this year and probably move up my list just because okay, he's continuing to do the same thing. But how long has the league had to prepare for LeBron? How long has the league had to prepare and figure out Kevin Durant?
Well, I
You
guess
know?
that's my question. Is this list the best, like who's best right now, or you like taking careers into account? Because if we're taking careers into account, then LeBron should be one, but
Well,
he's not the best player in the NBA.
right. So I don't mean like obviously like if we're comparing like I'm not comparing resumes, but it's the
Like,
fact that
what do you mean by sustained success then?
like like if this is a for instance, if Luca were to be doing what he's doing for like 2 years in a row, and then he slowly starts to not be as productive and people get to figure him out. Whereas like not it's not the resume of like LeBron being able to play for 20 years, but it's the fact that even in year 20, he can produce the same way that he did so long ago. Does that make sense? A little bit different between like
Hmm.
obviously like if we're going to talk about MVPs and like all that stuff like that. I'm not taking resume into account, but the fact that he can produce at that same high level over and over and over again and people still can't stop it or figure it out. And like that very well could be Luca. It could be. I haven't seen it yet over this amount of time. But again, this is like comparing, we're comparing the best of the best of the best. And so I don't put him over those guys that haven't dropped off for me. Um, and where that's been where I've seen a little bit of change in my heart, where I've kind of held KD up to this pedestal the whole time. Obviously, there's questions about leadership. There's questions about, I mean, he struggled against the Boston Celtics this last playoffs, really for the first time ever, where it looked like he was legitimately stopped. I kind of talked about it on here, but I put Giannis above him, and I think as somebody who is a KD lifer and someone who has really appreciated watching him all this time. To put someone like Giannis ahead, it's just very clear, but I just don't see that same clarity with someone like Luca yet.
I hear you. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Differ giving a different definition for career and resume and sustained success. Um, yeah, it's just crazy. The NBA has gotten younger and younger, and kind of like you said, change of heart a little bit with like KD or something. Um, I've always been someone that's like would take the veteran usually over like the young guy, but the NBA's continued to get younger, and like it's just crazy. Like Luca has, far surpassed like the stereotype of like, what are you going to get out of this international player? Um,
For
so
sure.
it's just crazy. Like he's on this pace to be like one of the greats. And the really interesting thing too that it has been brought up in multiple other platforms with people talking about the list is that the top 3 players on this list are all international basketball players, but which is pretty crazy when you think about where most of the NBA talent is from, which is here in the states. Top 3 players on this list are international players, so um, it's really interesting too, um, and seeing what people have like these biases of like who the better players are, and depending like what team they're on, or where they're from and all this kind of stuff. So um, I think lists like this are really hard to kind of navigate too, because like, you know, the classic question, if you're like not a Steph fan, is like, does Steph do this on another team? Like have that career on another team? Um, I think he probably does, but I'm a big Steph fan. Not a lot of people would think, a lot of people think he fits the system and stuff. Well, the system was kind of built around him. So
Right.
that's my take. Um, yeah. So it's just kind of crazy. But yeah, like you said, there's not a lot of separation between the top players in the world.
No.
So it's kind of impossible to create like a fair list, in my opinion, too. But you just like look at this top 15 and look at all the guys that are like, you know, under 30, or under like 28 years old. Like there's a good amount for being on the top 15 in the NBA currently, which is just crazy. So yeah, I don't know if you want to get into like guys that aren't in the top 15 that you can maybe make a case for. Um,
Yeah, there's one other thing I wanna make note of, or one player that I wanna make note of, and sorry for wanting to kick you out of the top 15, but I don't think Karl Anthony Towns is top 15, sorry.
I
There's
agree.
there's moments where I there it's crazy, every single year, I swear, he'll have a stint of dominance, and people are like, "He could be the best power forward of all time." Stop. You need to stop with that. There's moments where it looks like he can shoot better than any other power forward of all time, more dominant, whatever. He's way too inconsistent. And there's big moments that he comes up short in where I don't it is so disrespectful to all of the Garnett's, Tim Duncans, the Nowitzkis, where it's just stop with that. He's not top 15. He has moments where he looks like he's top 15. And kind of like what I was saying before, like there's sustained success or there's just like flashes. And he goes and flashes in and out multiple times a year. And you're not top 15 if you do that. Sorry.
I agree with you. I have a question for you about him.
Yeah.
Does your like dislike of him have anything to do with his like personality or attitude on the floor?
I mean, it's not always my preference. He looks like he whines a lot, but like I don't necessarily hold that against him. That I think that one of the bigger things, obviously, like the consistency part. And there's tons of people who are inconsistent in the league. It just seems to, for whatever reason, be around him where it's like, oh my gosh, he could be the best power forward of all time. Just that annoys me. But there's times where it's like, dude, you are so big and so athletic and so coordinated, how are you not more consistent? And how do you not dominate more? Like you're like a little bit more of a slender like Embiid, but like you see Embiid punish people. Like why don't you
Mhm.
punish people? I don't understand. So that's my big like too inconsistent, and you don't punish people like it looks like you can. And you do at times. But that's what makes it more confusing.
Yeah, you kind of said it. For me, I find myself like, and maybe this is unfair, but I find myself like thinking, not thinking as highly as of him as maybe I should be, because his like, use the word whining. Like I always feel like he's whining about something.
Yeah.
So it's like, he, to me, from an outsider's perspective, don't know the guy. Of course, this is all, just from observation, but he like doesn't have like that killer mentality on the floor. That, you mentioned three of the greatest power forwards in Garnett, Duncan and Nowitzki, and I feel like all three of them kind of had that mentality in one way or another. So, um, yeah, I think that's like ultimate disrespect to say that he could be the greatest power forward of all time. I think
It's
that's
disgusting. I
I
hate
think
when that conversation.
it's a super outlandish take. Um, and people are like, maybe he's the greatest shooting power forward. Yeah, maybe, but he's not hitting the difficulty of shots that Dirk was hitting. Like, come on, like his patented one leg fadeaway. Like, come on. So it's just kind of funny to me. Um, People are so quick to forget like how great people are. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm like my own self critic in this regard. I just have like this super high standard, I think, of like a guy like LeBron for some reason because he's in the conversation of, who's the best player of all time. And so yeah, we tend to critique those people even harder. Um, with greatness comes great criticism. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of interesting to talk through each of these players if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And then to go kind of back on what you were saying earlier, Lillard needs to be higher. It just
Yeah.
I don't want to call anyone out in particular. I mean,
How much
I mean,
higher, Josh? How much higher would you put him? Because I feel like right now, I feel like I could maybe get him to 11, but I definitely feel like I could get him to 12.
yeah, for sure. That's kind of what I was saying,
I just
that 10 to 12 range. I don't know if like I put him above Booker and I mean, obviously kick Cat out of there, but possibly Harden. I don't know what Harden is anymore. That one's confusing to me. I don't know if we're going to see, James Harden from 2 3 years ago again. That's kind of what is stuck in my brain of like
I hope so.
could have been situation, could have been health, I don't know. But I don't know. Not that he's lost it by any means, and it could have just been the system that he's in and the moment, but that dude was electric and historic for like 2 3 years straight. It was crazy.
Well, I think we can definitely see he's a player that's been affected by the rule changes in the game.
Yeah.
Like he took advantage of it for a while, like rightfully so. Um, but I don't know. I If I was to, think like can he get back relatively close to what he was? I do think he can, but you start to question like his commitment level. That's one thing about him that a lot of people tend to question, is his work ethic to even getting back to that point. But yeah, I Lillard, hasn't played for a little while, but he's been a guy that hasn't gotten the respect he deserves probably his whole career. And part
Yeah.
of that's where he plays, and they haven't really ever been a true contender. Even if they, made a conference finals, even if they've been in the playoffs, all that kind of stuff. So that's probably like where his slander comes from a little bit, and people, fault him for his loyalty and everything, which is a lost art, I think, in the NBA nowadays.
All right. So now that we've kind of talked about the top 15 from this list, I think Jordan has a few honorable mentions or someone that he wants to throw in there. But before you get into that, you need to make sure to take somebody out. That's something that happens every All-Star game, every All-Star, roster that comes out. Oh my gosh, this guy got snubbed. And then they've got no one that they can pick over them. So that's a big thing in my mind. If you think someone really did get snubbed, you need to take somebody out because that's how life works. Don't just get to shove more winners into the group. So if you have someone that you want to throw up in there, make sure to take somebody out. We'll go from there.
Yeah, I think kind of based off what we were talking about earlier, I would agree. I wouldn't have Karl Anthony Towns in my top 15. And the guy that comes in at 16 on that list is actually Trey Young, and I would put him up in the top 15. Um, I really like his game. I think he is a really good passer. I think he's a really good scorer. He's a little undersized, obviously, in the NBA, but elite handles and quickness. Yeah, I think he should be up there. The other guy he's not top 15 in my opinion. He actually falls at 22, but I do think that not knowing the names necessarily off the top of my head right now, I do think he should maybe be a little bit closer to the top 15 as Jalen Brown. Um, and I think a big part of that is because he plays both ends of the floor really, really well. Um, he tends to have a tough defensive matchup night in and night out, usually guarding one of the better guards on the team when like Marcus Smart isn't on that guy or isn't in the game. Um, and I also think that he's just like improved a ton over the last few years and has become a consistent part of the duo that they have in Boston. And so Yeah, I would put him really close to there. And like I mentioned too, I haven't looked at the list like in depth much past 15 or 20, and maybe but I don't know where does Kyrie fall on the list? Um, I'm not saying he's top 15, but do you know where he falls on the list right now?
I'm not, but I can find it real quick. Um, but while I'm looking this up, I do think that Jalen Brown is is in that 15 to 20, maybe 25 area. You said he landed at 22, so I think that could be, you know, spot on depending on who else is involved in there. But he, I mean, he saved them a few games. There were some moments where, um, in this last playoff run where Tatum ran dry or too much of the defense's focus on him or whatever. But I mean, Jalen stepped up and he's hit a lot of big shots for them. And like you said, I mean, he's a dude that's not willing to, back down from, the other team's best player and really get physical. Yeah, I like how emotionless he is when he plays. Like he's
Mhm.
just a killer. Like and one of those guys where, I think we hit on this a few episodes back when, the playoff run was going on. But um, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that duo. There's a lot of people who doubt it, with Tatum and Brown working together. But and maybe just because, for whatever reason, Tatum has kind of been thrusted into that number one role. Um, I don't know if that was just because of draft pick, and that's just kind of the nerve has been. And obviously, he's a better player than Jalen, but I don't think he's that far behind, in terms of when you watch them play and their production. I think Jalen would do great being the number one on a different team. Yeah, he's a special player for sure. Obviously, I wasn't looking at the Kyrie thing during that time, so I'm still working on that. Uh, this is also really annoying to figure out because he can't. I haven't found the full 1 through 50 list. It's always like, do you want to look at
It's
the
3
five
different
through 10, or
articles.
it's like
They
so dumb.
released them at different times, I think, on ESPN.
Uh, They have him as the 33rd best player.
Kyrie
Hmm.
on ESPN.
Yeah. It doesn't show
Is
like
that
the list of players around him, but it just showed the 33rd part.
I think that's kinda crazy without really knowing what their reasoning is.
I mean,
33rd?
is that where the quantity part comes in, knowing that he's not
That's
going to
what
be
I'm
there the whole
wondering, like,
season?
are they talking about
Yeah.
availability and all that? Because if we're
I
talking
also
about
don't.
availability, then Kawhi
Yeah.
Leonard shouldn't be on this list.
Yeah.
Like, that guy's had load management for quite some time, so yeah, I don't know. I'm kinda interested to see, like, what, ESPN means by all that, kinda. So let's say that me and you had a list, and we didn't take into consideration, like, I guess, availability, like, the quantity part, like, you would agree with me that he's not that far down the list, right?
No. I don't think he's
You
that far
wouldn't.
down.
Okay,
Sorry,
alright.
sorry, wording and verbiage. I don't think he should be that far down.
I think that's
Kyrie's
really far.
Kyrie's fascinating to me. I mean, especially we're gonna tie this back to coaching. Especially when you're coaching, there is that saying of like, be careful what you show me as a player, because then if it's really good, then my expectations will rise, kind of a thing. So it's like, be careful how good you play, because then I'm gonna expect this more out of you. Um, there was that. It was right after the Harden for Ben Simmons trade, and I can't remember if it was in Brooklyn or if it was in Philly, but um Kyrie like absolutely locked up Harden. And it was like from the start, like chested him up at half. And it was an unbelievable defensive effort. And it was that thing of like, could Kyrie do this all the time? Like obviously, like there's off nights and whatever, but like
right?
defensively, off
Because
nights
he's not known for that.
he's not known for that, and it's like everyone knows that offensive success, those nights come and go. But like that's kind of been a thing of like your defense should be the most stable thing about you. Like if you're a good defender, probably be a good defender all the time. If you're a bad defender, you're gonna get exposed all the time. It's not like you have a hot streak of defense. But like, can Kyrie do that more? And like I think from a skill perspective, Kyrie is like absolutely on another level. Like
Right.
basketball genius, like wizardry type of stuff that I don't think anybody else in the world can do the type of stuff that he does. It's insane. But there's the availability part. There's the I don't think he's point guards who are really good at offense kind of just get thrown into like, oh, they're not really that good of a defender, but like nobody's really paying that close of attention. Like Curry gets that a lot, but like when you watch him, he's really not a bad defender at all. Like he knows how to play his role and like he can rely on other people, but that's also being a good defender. But I mean, there's moments where you see just absolute wizardry from Kyrie Irving, and then there's times that you don't. So I wouldn't necessarily put him that low on the list, but he is a fascinating character to rank in
Well, if we're
general.
talking, if we are taking into consideration like the quantity part and like availability, clearly, he's down there.
Yeah.
Um, but with that being said, then we should be bumping Kawhi Leonard like down. So I don't know. That's just kind of like my take. I guess it depends on how you look at the list. So I don't know if he cracks the top 15 for me, but I definitely don't think he's the 33rd best player. I think he's higher than that.
Yeah. Mm. We're,
So,
I know this is a big conversation a few years ago when Zion was first drafted, but this list came out a few years ago when that happened, and they put Zion over Clay. Do you remember when that happened?
mm-hmm.
Um, where do you see Zion fitting in, like in general, on this type of a list? I don't know if he's top 50 on this list. I'm sure he's on there, but just based off of his injury history, again, availability, and kind of, it's one of those things where like when you watch him in the moment, you're like, wow, this dude is an absolute freak. Obviously very special, but you just don't see him. And I don't know how much of that was him or the Pelicans this last year. Because I mean, when you hear this guy, isn't able to play 5-on-5, but then he posts a video of him doing a 360 windmill. It's like he looks like he's all right, and obviously that's different than
Right.
playing a full professional game and travel and all that stuff. But um, I guess if like, given that he's assuming health, like how far up the line is Zion in the league right now?
That's so tough. It's because like you said, like we haven't seen it enough. Um, Man, I don't know. He's definitely top 25, I think, if he's fully healthy. And like you said, I don't know where he is on the list currently, or if he's on the list or whatever. But um, I don't think I wouldn't put him in my top 15. There's no way. He hasn't
No,
done enough. I definitely wouldn't do that. I can clearly state that. Top 25, top 30 probably is what I would go with. It's kind of one of those things, right? Like his very first game in the NBA, he caught fire in the fourth quarter, scored 17 straight points, hit some threes. I I still question his ability to shoot the three consistently in the NBA, which with how the three shot in the NBA now, you need to be able to in most situations. Um, as far as pure athleticism goes, I mean he's right up there in your top one, two, or three, right? Him and Ja Morant are probably two of the greatest athletes in the NBA right now. So it's one of those things. I don't know. He's stronger than almost everyone. He's shorter than people at his position, depending on what position you look at him as. He doesn't shoot as well as a lot of people in the NBA, but he's a better leaper than just about everyone else in the NBA. So I guess it just depends on what's important to you, right? He's like I said, he's not my top 15. He's probably top 25, top 30. But there's just so much unknown about him. Like,
Yeah.
um, I don't know if he even deserves to be on a list right now. Like, what are we comparing? There's nothing really. There's no evidence. I don't know if there's enough evidence for him yet. I hope he's healthy. I hope he's not someone that turns into just like being injury prone all the time and is considered an NBA bust. I hope that doesn't happen because the year that he had at Duke was like, oh my gosh, what is about to happen when he's in the NBA? Right? He's just like he's on the scene. Everyone knew who he was. So you just really hope that he's healthy and kind of gets to show for it in the NBA. This is off topic, but I will say this. I know we've mentioned this on this podcast before, but if he is healthy, the Pelicans are very dangerous, in my opinion,
Oh
um,
yeah.
in the Western Conference. And, they just locked in McCollum to another 2-year extension and paid him pretty well. And I really do think that, like, they have a lot of young talent. They seem to have been able to piece it together, at least for a short, part of the season last year when they added CJ. So we'll see if they can kind of take that, over the course of the summertime and bring it into this next season. Because if Zion's healthy, like I really do think that they make an interesting case in the Western Conference with how young they are, and how high energy they are too. So yeah, I know that's off topic, but I just had to throw that out there.
No, for sure. Yeah, they're very dangerous because they have a lot of guys who may not necessarily be bona fide number one players, but a lot of guys who are like whatever the next step below that is. Like in McCollum, obviously not better than Lillard, but there are moments where he could be the one to take over when Lillard was off a night or whatever. Brandon Ingram is unbelievable. He's very long and slender, and can you could just tell that he's getting better at finding his spots. Like that was kind of a transition for Kevin Durant through his career, and kind of what you see now of like if you go and watch like a season's long of Kevin Durant highlights, like you're going to see a lot of going to that short corner and fading away. Like he gets to his spots and he knows that nobody can guard me from here, so I'm going to get to that one spot. He's not going to do anything too wild and all over the place all the time because he knows exactly where he's unstoppable. And I think that's kind of where Brandon Ingram is now, where you see a lot of the same spots from him, whether it be kind of that mid post area or just a few dribble pull up and just rise up because nobody can contest it, and he's good enough to make it. And so I think, yeah, obviously him, and then Zion, kind of that mystery piece of I think we know that he can be individually dominant, and like this is coming from a very like I don't dissect Zion film and I haven't watched every play that he's made in the NBA, but he doesn't come across to me like somebody who can like come off and pick and roll and really like dissect and like read incredibly well like in an NBA setting. Obviously this is going to come across super disrespectful, but you think of point guards who, or just people who are ball dominant, who really do make other players great. I see Zion being more of like he knows how to read and attack in a way that makes him successful. Like I don't like he could be a great passer and I just haven't seen enough of it, but that's not what comes to mind.
Yeah.
Like I see him being someone who it's like throw anybody at him, he's gonna get to the rack and he's gonna finish. And
Mhm.
like he can shoot, but I don't know how consistent that's gonna be. And like obviously shooting looks different when people don't really guard you incredibly close. So and like you get that, you know, inside outside kick out where it's a straightaway shot. Like that's a very different situation than being um, you know, ball heavy, getting pressure, people knowing that you're about to shoot and still being able to hit it. I think that's a different story. But yeah, I see him being more of like an unstoppable force to getting his own bucket or making the like very obvious, like, okay, four people have collapsed. Let me kick it. But not so much of the like, hey, we can run this sideline screen like four times in a row and it's going to be four different options that happen and we're going to be successful every time. I don't know if I see that from him.
Good point.
Anyway, obviously we know everything there is about the NBA, and that's why we should, be NBA coaches, obviously. So, for all you league scouts and front offices who listen to the show, please, hit us up. um, all right. Trying to think if there's anything else we wanted to hit on. So the NBA season is around the corner. So sometime these next few weeks, we're going to be doing a little bit of a preseason predictions. We obviously did that at the beginning of the playoffs, but we'd like to do that again this year. So talk about MVP, defensive player of the year, who's going to be the finals, and all that sports punditry stuff that we're that we're tapping into. So that'll be fun, and we actually have some cool guests coming on soon. So yeah, make sure to come back next week. Feel free to follow, to like, to maybe even share this podcast with somebody else. But again, if you don't like the show, why are you still listening? And if you don't like the show, don't follow, don't subscribe, and just move on with your life. So thank you for listening to the Player to Coach podcast.